in doing that, we also got into talking about alignment. And so there's a lot of discussion around alignment in AI, aligning AI to common human values and goals. Like you said, there's different ways of thinking about this. Is it just maximizing curiosity, like Elon Musk suggested some time ago? What are the kinds of things that we need to do to get an AI aligned with our goals? Um, but in the way that our society is set up today, we tend to reward short term profits over things like long term sustainability. And you have mentioned elsewhere the potential for an ultra capitalistic system that avoids the pitfalls of the traditional capitalism that you're in now. Can you explain to our audience how decentralization and tech can create a more efficient and equitable allocation of resources?
Yeah, so there's sort of two things here I want to talk about. Well, maybe we can come back to the alignment problem in a bit, because there's I want to share an idea about a way that we might be able to capture human morality. So I'll come back to the debates. But I was for a long time, and still am, very interested in decentralization, because I've worked in large organizations, I've worked in small companies, I've had my own startup, and um, I I think a lot of companies start in the same way. That is, they want to be decentralized. They want to get processes and bureaucracy and hierarchies out of people's way, so they can go and do the things that they need to do. But of course, as you get bigger as an organization, you end up being creating hierarchies, putting in these processes and structures that slow organizations them down. They prevent them from being innovative. And so, for the past 15 years, I've been trying to figure out how could we use AI to create decentralized organizations. What I mean by that is organizations that they're able to identify the best diverse group of experts to be able to make the decision, whether it's feedback or hiring or firing or pay. Rather than those decisions being made in the hierarchy, can you identify those people? It's often called a liquid organization, or liquid democracies. And I think that now AI can, by the way, I think that we are able to now ingest all of the kind of digital footprint that exists across an organization. And an AI could sort of make sense to it. And they could say, look, you've worked very closely with that person, you're very knowledgeable about their domain, you understand about the company strategy, so therefore you should have more sort of rights to say in their salary than somebody else. So I'm very interested in how to do that. And the reason why I'm interested in how to do that is because let's assume that over the next decade, AI will free people up from tasks and maybe even hold jobs. One of the things that I'm interested in, by the way, that's a good thing, because it means that we can reduce the cost of goods. But if it happens very quickly, as I've mentioned before, it could create some sort of social mess. So how can we use AI to identify what granular pieces of work people could be doing and recommend and enable those people to do that work? So rather than being a job role, can you understand people's skills, their plethora of different ways that they can contribute, and then decentralize that across different tasks that need to be done across an organization? And one of my dreams was to try and figure out how could you scale that to a planet? How could you create a planet where we are free to be able to contribute in different ways, and we're facilitated by AI. And something I still think deeply about, and we're still working on in Satalia. But what's interesting, what's happened over the past several years, is the birth of open source. And I think this is sort of a much more interesting and semi-related concept, which is, there's a reason why Meta open sourced their large language models. It's not necessarily for the good of their heart. Is because it doesn't hurt their business model. Right? If Google and Microsoft open source their models, then it potentially has a revenue impact. Meta can do it because their business model is not dependent upon it. And what happens with Meta is that they're able to now capture more data, which is, as we know, makes AI smart. Data is valuable, but also they can access talent that are contributing to those open source technologies. And what I'm seeing is this impulse more and more to actually open source innovations rather than just sitting on them and until somebody else comes along and out innovates you. You open source it, you make it available to your competitors, etc. Because what's valuable is the data and the talent. And ironically, it's that open sourcing, which is a very sage business decision. It's that open sourcing also creates a world of abundance. Like large language models, which are perhaps the most intelligent technology we've ever built are pretty much free now to everybody, or they will be free to everybody soon. That power is in the hands of everybody. And there's a possibility where I don't know that, I don't know how many phones you go through every few years, but I go through a couple of phones every few years. Now, if we had those phones, if we gave those phones to people that could, not have computers, if those phones were connected to the internet, then not only is education then free, because pretty much, all education is free on the internet now, anyway, but those people will then have access to these technologies to get them to go and create new innovations. And so this idea of open sourcing and decentralization, I think, is a very powerful idea. And what we're seeing is actually the capital model, the capitalistic model, forcing the open source movement.